So what, if anything, can the international community do to reduce tensions in Syria? What role will the three powers, Russia, Turkey and Iran, play? And is the US position on Syria relevant anymore? Let's watch the second part of my interview with Ambassador Xie.
We've always maintained the position that the future of President Assad should be and must be and can only be decided by the people of Syria inside the country. It is up for the Syrian people to decide their own future, the future of their country, and also the future of the next government through elections, democratic elections. I think it's not for outside forces to impose a solution on this. After all, history and many events have proven that an imposition of any solution by outside is not workable. Just look at the situation in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, whether that the country in question is stable, has peace, and has the economy growing? No, not. So I think in the final analysis, it can only be the people themselves of Syria who can decide their own future.
There's also the question of the humanitarian assistance or the kind of aid that China provide to the Syrian people. Now, some Western media has accused China of not doing enough, for instance, in helping the refugees. What is your reaction to this kind of accusation?
We've been trying our best within our command and our capacity to provide humanitarian relief work. And so far, we have provided humanitarian assistance in the amount of 480 million RMB, including cash, food, shelter, medical equipment, medicine. You have to remember that China is still a developing country. Per capita terms, China's economy, our per capita GDP still ranks about 80th place or something. But even having said that, China has been trying its best to provide humanitarian assistance. Just recently, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced China will provide another 200 million RMB for the relief work for the refugees in Syria. Will continue to do so as China is as I said, China is a responsible country, big country that we are ought to fulfill our international responsibilities, but that should be done in accordance with our capacity within our command.
Let me also ask you this question. Now, some Western media reports have said that China has a stake in resolving the Syrian crisis because there are some 5,000 radicalized fighters that are fighting in Syria that have originated from the western regions of China. Is that the reason that China has increased its involvement in resolving the Syrian crisis? Or one of the reasons?
This is one of the reasons that China is actively participating in in trying to find a solution for the Syrian crisis, because some of the terrorists are indeed from China. But I would also like to say this, that the fight against terrorism is everybody's responsibility, because terrorism is the common enemy of the world. Just look at the horrible attacks on civilians in Paris, in London, in Berlin, in Europe, in Ankara, in other places in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia. These terrorist attacks need to be stopped, and the terrorists need to be dealt with, need to be defeated. It is the responsibility of every country in the world. It is the responsibility of the international community. And China can only contribute to the joint efforts of the world, of the international community.
Special Envoy Xie, let me ask you this question on the new mechanism we have seen emerging in the international effort to try to resolve the Syrian crisis. We know that Russia, Turkey and Iran, three regional powers, announced in Astana, Kazakhstan, that they would create a trilateral mechanism to observe and ensure full compliance with the ceasefire, which has been in place since last December. Now, you visited Turkey and Russia in January and just left Iran a few days ago. How do you view the feasibility of this cooperation, given that the three don't support the same final outcome for Syria?
First, I think it's an added assurance for the true and real implementation of the cessation of hostility agreement. With this mechanism in place, it is I think that the agreement has a much better chance of surviving, not like the previous two. And I think it is, as you rightly put it, it's the joint effort by three countries, Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Let's give credit where credit is due. Such mechanism does have some positive effect on the ceasefire agreement implementation. It is conducive. So let's give support. But having said that, I think the three countries alone cannot resolve all the problems, even in monitoring the ceasefire agreement. I would say this, that if I remember correctly, these countries have expressed the desire to include other international players into the mechanism. And I think this is a welcoming piece of news because I would like to see some neutral countries joining the mechanism, so to add more authority, impartiality, and effectiveness of this monitoring system.